Chapter 5. On the Beam. Why do we have headlines? A piece of good copy is carefully constructed, it is tightly written, it has sequence. Why can't the opening sentence be our starting point? There is one important answer. We need a headline in order to give our advertisement stronger and quicker arresting power. The important fact is that our prospects are not looking for our advertisement. Their minds are on any of 100 other subjects. They are looking through the newspaper, magazine, or business paper, either casually or with some particular interest in mind. They turn some of the pages pretty rapidly. Our headline is one of the instruments we have with which to catch their attention. The speed with which our headline can act obviously depends upon both what it says and how it is displayed, what kind of type or hand lettering, how large or how isolated. Isolation often makes for greater visibility than does size in itself. On this we should agree. Our headline is much more than a label for our copy, but it is not our message. It's somewhere between these two. If we were to make our headline merely a label, an advertisement about a monkey wrench, we would probably catch only those who were in the market for a monkey wrench at that particular moment. We must work to do more than that. If our headline could deliver our message, we would have no reason for following it with much, if any, copy. It wouldn't actually be a headline in that case. It would be a piece of display copy, complete or almost complete in itself. Let's stop and review one of Aesop Glim's pet maxims. The arresting power of an advertisement is the ability of the headline, the layout, and the main illustration, working as a composite unit, to force a reading of the first paragraph by those who are our prospects. It is, of course, a fact that illustrations and layout devices may contribute greatly to the attention-catching power of our advertisement. Let us acknowledge that fact, and then pass on with only the comment that layouts and illustrations demand important techniques of their own. We have headlines A, to increase eye-catching in general, B, specifically to catch the eye of those who are prospects, C, to make these prospects read the first paragraph of our copy. We must keep reminding ourselves that the strongest headline we can write for any given product or service is the one that has interest for those who are prospects for that product or service. If we stick to this, then our headline is definitely on the beam toward the point to which we want to lead our prospect. If we write a stopper, one that might conceivably stop all the readers of the publication, the chances are that our headline will be too broad in its interest and quite likely off the beam. A stopper is something that belongs in a bathtub. It is no stunt to write a sensational headline. It is far more difficult to write a headline that is definitely on the beam for those who are our prospects. A headline that automatically sorts out our prospects for us. A headline with sufficient force and interest to make our prospects read the first paragraph of our copy. We might conceivably sit down and make some kind of list of all the kinds of headlines there are. To old Aesop Glim, this seems like a futile procedure. We are in danger of theorizing and generalizing. Headlines get built one by one. Stick to the job at hand. Test your headlines one by one. Hold your testing down to 3 simple questions. Will this headline catch the attention of those who are our prospects? Will it tempt them to read the first paragraph of our copy? Is our starting point, the headline, as near our ending point as possible? We might enlarge on this third question. Our whole job in writing our piece of copy is to overcome our prospects' ignorance or indifference to our proposition, to substitute knowledge and interest for ignorance and indifference. Our headline is the starting point in that process. It is the ambassador sent out to meet our prospect on his own grounds and start leading him toward our beliefs. We must be certain that we neither overshoot nor undershoot the mark. The question of how long a piece of copy should be is not a matter of theorizing. It can be determined accurately only by facing the facts of the situation at hand. We must not suppose any more knowledge or interest than actually exists. We must not waste either our prospect's time or our own space by telling him a lot of things he already knows. Here are 4 headlines. This model mother could write a book, Epana toothpaste. Don't be alarmed. Wake up to music, GE radio with built-in clock. Walking on air, till we tripped on a cloud, Mutual Life of NY. How to take a load off your mind, Hat Research Foundation. Are these different kinds of headlines? Who cares? To old Aesop Glim, it would appear that each of these headlines lives up to the same specifications. It selects its audience. It invites a reading of the first paragraph. It provides a starting point no further afield than was required by the ignorance or indifference of the prospects. Richland Davidson Shoe Co. of Nashville, Tennessee, make fortune shoes for men. This enables them to have headlines such as, "When you step into a fortune, sir, Canada Dry Water, which is wet, features lively pinpoint carbonation." An early headline was, "Enjoy life. Adaptations and perversions of familiar expressions often make arresting headlines." In Aesop Glim's opinion, the above are particularly effective examples. When we write copy, we usually have the job of educating our readers on something they don't know about, or something toward which they are pretty indifferent. We endeavor to establish a common meeting ground with our prospects, from which we can lead them to the subject in which we want to interest them. If our headline has the ring of familiarity, we are of course saving time. Familiarity usually inspires confidence. When the reader spots a new application or twist to a familiar expression, he is inclined to be somewhat delighted with his own great perspicacity. The chances are that this kind of headline all but writes itself when it belongs. A great deal of the time, this type of headline is not applicable, and a copywriter would make a great mistake to strain himself trying to create one. If an adaptation or a perversion of a familiar expression fits, it fits like a glove. If it is dragged in by the heels, it probably creates either a non sequitur or a very precarious transition. Either way, you probably lose your reader just as soon as he's sampled your opening sentence. Although he wouldn't express it that way, you've let him down. All your buildup of layout, illustration, and headline, and all the time and money invested have then bought you just that much of your reader's attention, and no more. Headline doodles. The best years of your wife. No 2 days about it. To market. Asleep for the night. These idle doodles were designed simply to emphasize the fact that adaptations and perversions of familiar sayings and expressions often make effective headlines. They must not be so tricky that the reader doesn't ever get into the copy. They must lead toward the point of your story. When this type of headline fits, it constitutes an easy point of contact with your prospects. You win their attention on familiar ground, then start leading them toward your goal. Here are some headlines Aesop Glim likes. The brew with a head of its own, Kruger Beer and Ale. 2 feet in front of every crowd, Holland Racine Shoes. What's dangerous about a waltz? Kleinert's Dress Shields. Restrain yourself, Real Form Girdle. Before you treat yourself to a bathroom like this, American Gas ASN. It's so easy, White Sewing Machines. Is the water you use out of date? Permuted Water Conditioning. Buick says, hitch your braggin' to this star. Listerine says, with a boy and girl at a dance illustration. May I have the last waltz? You've had it. These last two have one special characteristic in common. Both are colloquial in the sense of ordinary, everyday conversation, yet neither indulges in bad grammar. Advertising must not set a bad example. The Buick headline is, of course, an adaptation of a familiar saying, which always makes for quick acceptance by the reader. Moreover, it has just the degree of manufacturer's pride in his product to give the prospect some confidence that it is a star product. For many years, one of the all-time top headlines has been Listerine's "Often a Bridesmaid, Never a Bride." In the opinion of Aesop Glim, he can't decide whether "You've had it" tops or merely equals the older pace setter. In any event, this new one delivers an unpleasant message in an unavoidable manner. Yet with a smile, too. This seems much more effective than some of the other whispering behind your back headlines, which have been used on kindred, intimate subjects. Too many have been in the school of "Have you stopped beating your wife?" which is almost always unconvincing and therefore ineffective. The beginner sometimes asks, do you write the headline before you write the copy, or after? The answer is, suit yourself. Most of the time your headline, or at least its makings, will come to you first. Put it down and start writing. Maybe you'll polish or change it later, maybe not. Sometimes you feel that you are ready to write everything but the headline. Go ahead and write. The headline will come sooner or later. Maybe it will be one of the sentences you write. Maybe you'll finish the piece of copy before you hit on the right headline. In this latter case, be sure your headline is not merely a label or subject title. Never forget that your headline must make them read the first paragraph of your copy. If you're writing a campaign and have established your copy policy in advance, then the chances are that you'll write the headlines first. Most campaigns tell the same basic story, as outlined in the copy policy, in every advertisement. You are merely seeking new dresses, new approaches. If your groundwork has been well done, if all concerned are in agreement on the copy policy, you should be able to do all the headlines and all the layouts even before you write the copy if you wish. Then each combination of layout, illustration, and headline shows how you're going to try to get the prospect into the opening paragraph. Sometimes you see a copywriter staring at a sheet of blank paper. He knows what he wants to say. He spent plenty of time getting the facts straight. But he can't get started because he hasn't found the headline. Some copywriters assume that a piece of copy must always be written in sequence. Since the headline appears at the top, it must be written first. Then the first paragraph, the second, etc. It's comfortable when it happens that way. But it isn't the only way. A good many pieces of copy have been put together in the manner of a jigsaw puzzle. As soon as the writer was sure of one part, he put that down. When another part became clear, he put that down, possibly on a separate sheet of paper. Suddenly, all the parts came together. Their relation and sequence were quite obvious, just as soon as all were visible. And somewhere, in one of the parts, he found he'd written his headline. Don't wait for the perfect headline or the perfect word, phrase, or sentence. Don't sit and stare at blank paper. Whether you're fully prepared or not, whether you have plenty of time or are up against the deadline, start putting words down on the paper. Then, by elimination and substitution, the job will begin to shape up. Most of our waits and delays are merely laziness. Aesop Glim remembers Herb Field, around 1923, then general manager of Lord & Thomas. Mr. Lasker was in Washington, running the shipping board. Field managed, but he drove copywriters with a light rein. One of his dicta was, "No copywriter has more than 7 good headlines in his system in any one working day." Very comforting when you were vainly trying to accomplish the impossible. In the world of chemistry, the average atom is not very choosy. He'll take up with almost any other reasonably congenial atom or atoms, with no thought of what the combination may produce. When a free oxygen atom runs into a couple of disengaged hydrogen atoms, splash, it's water, H2O. But that same little oxygen atom would have been every bit as happy in teaming up with the right associates to make sulfuric acid, H2SO4. Aesop Glim doesn't even pretend to recall any other chemical formulas. Fortunately for him, in this bit of moralizing, water and sulfuric acid differ violently, and both contain some oxygen. We shall use the atom metaphor in order to gain a certain new perspective on advertisement construction in general, and headlines in particular. Illustrations, headlines, subheads, text, typefaces, hand lettering, logotypes, and sundry other display elements. These constitute the repertoire of the atoms with which we construct our advertisements. We have some choice as to which we use. We have complete responsibility for seeing that we mix our ingredients in such a way as to assure the production of what we expect. We don't want to get water when we thought we were mixing a batch of sulfuric acid, nor vice versa. We must never forget that our finished advertisement is the sum total of all its parts, the composite of everything we have put into it. We must never forget that the elements become interrelated, act upon each other, thereby acquiring new values and even new meanings. We must be sure that the new meanings are those we expected and desired. Bearing in mind that the foregoing is true of all the elements of our finished advertisement, we shall now confine our discussion to the headline. The various ways in which the headline affects and is affected by the other elements merely emphasize the interrelationship of all the parts. First, and perhaps simplest, it is recognized that what the headline says and how it looks are two separate matters. Let us assume that we have, for our purposes, the perfect headline. Think of some headline you consider perfect. Now picture how it will look in each of a dozen different typefaces or styles of hand lettering. With all the variations we could achieve, we could probably give our headline at least 20 different tones of voice. Between the most feminine and the most masculine extremes of typeface or hand lettering, We can certainly shade the meaning of many a headline, sometimes change it entirely. Perhaps you've had this experience. Your advertisement appears in a publication next to some other advertisement or some bit of editorial matter, whereupon your headline instantly establishes a new relationship and acquires a new meaning, in conjunction with the illustration alongside. Aesop Glim once saw a very dignified insurance advertisement placed next to some motion picture publicity photos. The headline in the insurance advertisement suddenly took on quite a number of double meanings. Of course, the publication's makeup man is one gremlin we cannot control. Our only protection is to be sure that when the reader traces our headline back to our advertisement, he will find an airtight relationship and the meaning we intended inside the four boundaries of our advertisement. Now, let us consider a famous advertisement of World War II, The Kid in Upper 4. Let's agree that that is a good headline. Let's agree that, in conjunction with an illustration of a young soldier in a Pullman upper, we have an advertisement with wide appeal and great arresting power. Now, suppose that we substitute for the young soldier a young goat, or a squalling brat, or a particularly cute little chorus girl. Possibly there is no headline strong enough to protect itself from an illustration. Naturally, we plan to have them work hand in hand. We must be certain that they will do so. We must be certain that there is not even some minor detail in our illustration which can in any way deflect the aim of our headline. Aesop Glim is always violent on the subject of headlines in the form of questions. The fact that your headline is an atom, willing to associate itself with almost anything available, anything that will produce either sense or nonsense, constitutes another reason to beware of questions as headlines. If you use a question as a headline, you must be certain that it is the kind of question which can start only one chain of thought in the mind of your prospect, the chain of thought you want started. The average question wouldn't be a question unless there were two or more possible sensible answers, and there are usually several possible foolish answers readily available. Your prospect's mind is full of stray thoughts. A question has more than average opportunity to tie itself to one of these stray thoughts and thereby get itself deflected wide of the mark at which you were aiming. With all the foregoing in mind, we can recognize at least three types of strong headlines. The penalty of leadership. This famous old Cadillac headline represents the type of headline that might be called self-sufficient. It is self-sufficient in two different ways. First, it does not require an illustration to enhance its arresting power. Second, it is self-sufficient in its ability to keep from being misunderstood. It isn't the kind of headline that is apt to create a false association of ideas. A few people have expressed themselves as being tired of the penalty of leadership. Say it's become a bromide. We must be sure that we judge every headline solely in terms of its interest to its audience of prospects. The only headlines which should interest everybody are those on products for which everybody is a prospect. Try this on for size. This American locomotive headline was used in conjunction with an illustration of a hangman's noose. The partnership of illustration and headline had only one possible and completely self-evident meaning. The combination had arresting power and pointed in only one possible direction, the first paragraph of the text. The arresting power stopped you. You couldn't be satisfied without reading the copy. The Kid in Upper 4. As already agreed, this headline had the right illustration, and the combination had great arresting power. Quite likely the headline would have been almost as effective with no illustration. We would merely have to assume that the great majority of our readers knew the meaning of Upper 4. On this supposition, we can assume that this headline, even without its illustration, pointed in only one direction, a reading of the first paragraph. That's it for today. If you enjoyed this video, you might want to check our link in the description, where you'll find many other fundamental advertising books in different languages. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more persuasion and marketing-related content. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again in the next video.